Okay, maybe it's not completely useless, but we're going to stack it up against these other aiming systems and see how it compares in the long run. And by long run, I mean long range, which it will not. Sorry, buddy. I want to give this a fair chance because I do want to discuss the things that I love about a red dot. The main problem that scopes with magnification have is that you'll never get a true 1x, and what I mean by that is when you look through just a simple red dot sight like this, where it's basically just a piece of glass, you're seeing literally what reality is on the other side of that. There's no trickery, there's no magnification, and that makes shooting feel a lot more natural, which at close quarter ranges can be very critical, and that's where these things really do shine. Now you might think that you want a super bright light so you're able to see it no matter what, but the problem is that the brighter you get, the more you get a blooming effect, or the dot stops being as crisp and it actually starts to block some of your vision as you can't see through the dot. Ideally, when you're setting the brightness for a red dot, as soon as you're able to start seeing through the dot, that's usually a really good brightness setting for the environment that you're in. But just keep that in mind that if you've got it too bright, you might be missing things behind your dot, and it's especially hard to aim at targets that are at range when it's that bright. Another problem is that regardless of the brightness setting, the dot will overlap your target and you will have to shoot through something, which makes it quite difficult at times. Now, when it comes to red versus green illumination, there's a couple of things to note here. Now, this gets debated a lot because it is ultimately going to come down to preference and if the red and green can go bright enough for the environment or dim enough for the environment. Green is usually very ideal for bright outdoor daylight settings, and red is usually used for nighttime settings because it doesn't blow out our natural night vision. Now again, the brightness is the main key here, so if your green doesn't go bright enough, red can work, and if your red doesn't go dim enough, then green can work. Ultimately, you just want to make sure that you're able to see through the illumination and it's not causing reflections in the glass or blooming, other things like that that make it very difficult to see through. So with that being said, they're not completely useless, but when we stack them up against the other options we have on the table, you'll start to see why these aren't exactly ideal. Now, regardless of what you get here, I would recommend that you purchase some kind of lens protection system because you do not want to take a shot directly to one of these scopes. They can get pretty pricey, and for the low cost of just a couple of bucks, you can save yourself some tears. Now, while they do look a little different, they are pretty much the exact same thing when it comes down to how they operate. The main difference with a red dot system like this is that the multiple pieces of glass, the coating that's on them, it makes it appear as though the dot is being projected onto the target as opposed to the glass. In addition, it allows for much better control over the lighting environment and it gives you a much clearer view of the situation. As well, some of these systems come with a standard little bit of zoom, but this one in particular is just a 1x. You also get a much wider view typically through these systems than you will through the window of these. Now, depending on how you look at it, that can be a good or a bad thing because the lower profile this is in front of your eyes, the less it's going to cover up. Bigger systems like this can hide a lot more from your peripheral vision, so keep that in mind. Okay, moving along, you might recognize this one from the other videos. Now, this is what's known as a LPVO, or a low-powered variable optic. The main giveaway for these is that they start somewhere around 1x and you can actually gain magnification as well if you want, i.e. the variable part. So the zoom level on this one is 1.25 up to 4 with 32 mils peripheral. The scope also has red and green illumination. Now the main difference is that instead of a dot, we have a reticle. And just like the dot, the brightness can be adjusted. We only have 3 settings on this one, which doesn't give us a whole lot of options. Like I said, if we don't have enough brightness settings, that can be tricky, especially in low light scenarios. Now because I've had so much practice with this one, I can say that it is extremely usable at pretty much all ranges. While it is nice to be able to change your zoom level, the problem is that you will have to take your support hand off in order to do so, and that causes you to have a slight delay if something does kick off. So provided that you have the time, it's quite a nice feature, especially if you see someone far away and you decide you need to punch in. The reticle will cover up a fair bit, however, once you zoom in, proportionately, it doesn't cover up as much. This gives you a much cleaner assessment of the target. These systems are less susceptible to glare and start offering some interesting features such as bullet drop compensation. This allows you to offset your reticle for different ranges, and depending on how your hop-up system is, you can make these work very well in tandem. Now the main drawback as we're moving forward is they do get more pricey. I would highly suggest you do your research thoroughly so you get something that is not only going to meet your needs but also is going to last you long into the future, because if you're going to be investing that kind of money, you want it to last. Moving on to something that you're more likely likely going to be using in a sniping context, these are the big scopes. These are the ones that typically don't have very low magnification available to them. So in this particular case, the lowest magnification it has is 3 and it goes up to 9. These are obviously great when you're at exceedingly long ranges and you need to be as accurate as possible. But there is kind of a point of diminishing returns. If your gun isn't capable of reaching these ranges, if you're not using a sniper, a DMR, something along those lines, you're never going to need a scope like this. The problem with these high magnification scopes is that unless you're planning on being a sniper, I don't really see situations that an LPVO can't account for. If you need a little bit of extra zoom, this gives you a realistic amount and isn't overkill. As well as the profile and the size that it takes on the weapon, this is something you have to consider. You would not put this on an MP5, would you? Oh, this is happening. Oh no, it fits. Yes. Okay, you know what? Never mind. I take it back. You have my complete permission to put a scope this big on an MP5K. I'm totally cool with it. Well, it does look cool. Functionality-wise, no more HK slap. It's more like HK stuck. No matter what, though, it is going to come down to what you decide is going to work best for you as a player. As rare as it might be for me to use one, I still do love red dots. They have their purposes, and realistically, there's nothing else that you put on this. I mean, you wouldn't put a scope on a shot. Blame them for making this fit. That's not my fault, okay? If they didn't want me to do this, they wouldn't let it fit. But no, here we are. Now, if you know you're exclusively going to be working in close range, then yes, a red dot pretty much is going to be your best friend. However, if you are planning on doing literally anything else, then I would suggest you look into LPVOs. These might be just what you need. Now, if you're more of an iron sights person, it's important to have them zeroed as well, so make sure you check out this video here for some great tips on how to do so. Thank you so much for watching. Class is dismissed.